Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the City of Farmers Branch Study Session meeting. It is January 5th, 2021. The time is 3 p.m. First and foremost, just want to wish everyone a happy new year. It's good to be back here and kick off a new year, hopefully in the right direction. Unfortunately, today, Councilmember Norwood's not going to be with us. He is feeling a little under the weather and decided to sit this one out. So if you don't see his wonderful face and just incredible wisdom, you now know why. But we will begin with A1, discuss regular agenda items. I'm going to start to my left, Councilmember Baumgartner.
In reading through the agenda on I-6, which is the facade grant for McEwen Street, I'm not suggesting that we should change anything. We've got a policy in place, for it. But as I read through it, and maybe this is the right thing for future agenda items, but as I was reading through it, I was thinking, we've had a lot of these, our budget is shrinking in terms of available dollars. And it seems to me like, going forward, we should have more focus on high traffic areas that are, with limited budget to have it more targeted. This is on McEwen Street, which is, kind of not in the main thoroughfares. And most of our past facades have been on pretty high traffic areas. But I just think that we should have a conversation in the future about if we have limited resources, how we target them to get the greatest impact for them.
Okay. All right. Sorry. All right. Thank you. Councilmember Lynn.
So I have a question regarding I-2, please. And that is, just wanted to find out how many pardon me, sorry. My question was in regards to I-2, first item. How many properties have taken advantage of the PACE program the last year?
In the city of Farmers Branch or
Yeah,
the state?
City of Farmers Branch.
We had one apply, and actually their lender was the one that suggested some changes that we were considering tonight, and that project is on hold.
So
The other
one
ones
that, the
did
one that
not.
applied is on hold?
Yes, the one, either waiting for these changes, these were some of the problems that they had, so the PACE authority thought, let's go ahead and make some contractual uniform changes that are similar to the other contracts in other cities where they haven't had any hurdles, just to make it a little easier.
Okay. And just for the benefit of everybody who is not here or reading it, can you just verify that there's no cost to the city to provide access to this program?
Correct. This actually is a fantastic program for older dated assets that want to utilize a cost savings when they do remodeling. And so the Property Assessed Clean Energy Program that we approved a few years ago, it's just a matter of, I guess, getting the marketing out. So there's no cost to the city, and it's a cost between the lender and the property owner. And it's a tool that they can use, an extra different type of tool that they can use for energy savings.
Okay.
And so I did a webinar recently on it, but I actually look forward to doing more so we can get the word out. And there's no cost to the city, and it's not a special assessment on the appraisal district either.
And we spend any city resources administering any part of this program?
Correct.
All right, thank you. So that takes care of that. My next one was regarding I-4. And in considering this Betterments Task Force, if we're if it's the will of council to allow this to continue for the next year, I would like to suggest that the task force have a citizen representative from each council district as part of this that is appointed by the council representative for that district. I think that's fair and makes something like this equitable And I don't know if this is the time to talk about that or whether we wait until approval of the agenda. But I see that if we're trying to make sure that we're getting input from all areas of the city, then expanding this to include a representative from each council district would be my recommendation for this task force.
I'm totally fine with that. So if that's the will of council, I mean, I think that's an amendment that would we need to pull that out to make an amendment, or would it be, since it's on consent, just make a consent?
We can make that change, but.
Can't really approve it tonight because we got to get everyone on there and then approve it, right?
We can approve it tonight with those changes. Your appoint, the current appointees are listed in there, so we'll have to come back and add.
We'll just add them. Okay. All right. Councilmember Driscoll, do you have any problem with making that amendment to the task force to add a representative from each council district?
No, I don't think I have a problem with it.
No? You good? Okay. Councilmember Rotana?
No, I don't have a problem with it. I would just want to make sure that we add language to where, I know we have a few folks that are already a part of it in their capacity, for example, in the Arts Commission and so forth. So then I would just say we add language to advise that it would be an additional representative regardless of who's already on there, because they're on there for a different capacity. So we would have, for example, let's say we have someone from District 4 already on there due to their capacity in the Arts Commission, then I would advise that we can still have someone from District 4 to be on it as under the hat of a citizen and community member as well.
Okay. Yeah, I'd agree. I mean, I'm looking at this as maybe as Councilmember Lynn is looking to do is basically each one of us just gets to appoint a person that's kind of our liaison to the task force. Councilmember Baumgren, are you okay with that?
I'm okay with it. I'm not opposed to it, but I do think that, in the past few years, we've gone through the process on our boards and commissions, to make the boards and committees more, the more people you get on a board, you get to a point where it gets diluted, and it's not like you add more people and you become more effective. We've learned that from experience in government and in business, here in the city, and my experience in business. So I think, I'd love to hear Councilman Norwood's ideas on this. I'm not opposed. I just don't see, we've got to have one person, do we have everyone from each electoral voting zone? Where do we stop it? How do we go? All of our citizens are represented by either people on the committee or by the council when it comes back. I don't think anybody's getting left out. And that's my personal opinion. I tend to be against it. But again, if it's the will of the council and that's the thought, then I'll support it.
Yeah. Okay. Councilmember Lynn, any more comments?
My only comment is that in addition to the staff and those that serve on boards already, there's no other representation, and I guess there's two people other than a council member that's already on this committee. This is an important undertaking for the future of our city. And, I don't believe this was done when 635 was widened. And, we have 4 major entrances to our city that border 635. And what do we have there? We have nothing. okay? No landscaping, nothing to better those areas. And this is something that residents have been talking about for many, many years. And so I just think in order to better enfranchise other people or involve other people, for a better term, it makes sense to appoint somebody, appoint a citizen representative from each district. And, it's their city. We need to let them be a part of this decision-making process.
Okay. Like I said, I have no problem with each council member adding one person to be their liaison and voice. And I guess we'll separate that vote out at the time. I mean, it seems so far everyone is kind of in agreement. I know you want to get Norwood's, but he's not here. He'd get a voice on it as well, adding a person. So, I would just want to check with you in terms of if you're good with it, then that way we can move consent forward with all the items, hopefully at one time.
If it's everybody else's belief we should move forward with it, I'm fine with that, right? I think we'll make ourselves not more effective, but less effective.
Yeah, well, we'll cross those bridges. So, thank you. Okay, Councilmember Lynn. Councilmember Driscoll.
Yes, just on I-9, about the graffiti ordinance. I'd just like to know a little bit more background, how much of an issue that's been in the city, and kind of what's been our experience and history with that.
Good afternoon, council members, Mr. City Manager. My name is Leo Bonanno. I'm your code enforcement manager. The graffiti situation in our city seems to be a little bit more severe than some folks might think. We have had significant amount of complaints about graffiti. There seems to be one group in particular that is causing a majority of our issues. I assume a gang or a group of some kind. They seem to go by the name of the Feds. And they're hitting the city pretty hard in a variety of places. So those are the things we're seeing very frequently right now. The ordinance that is before you is meant to better align the city's regulations on graffiti with what the state requires. The state's Texas Local Government Code puts requirements on us before we can properly abate graffiti if we have to. And so that language is not currently in our code of ordinances and needs to be if we're going to deal with this problem effectively and legally. So that's what you have in front of you today.
Do you have any follow-up questions, Mr. Driscoll?
Has that been more of a problem on the east side, where it's more kind of industrial commercial, or exactly where?
To be fair, it seems to be an issue. I would probably say the east side may have a little bit worse, but we have seen it in every area. Even if it's not on structures, if it's not on walls or buildings, we're spotting it on utility boxes, electricity boxes, cable boxes. Anything that stands alone and out in the open is fair game. So I would say that the entire city is at risk, and I've seen it in a good amount. But I think you're probably fair in saying that the east side is getting it the most at this point.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Do you have any other items, Councilmember Driscoll?
No.
Okay. Councilmember Ratana, do you have any questions regarding I-9 or any other items outside of that?
No, sir.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. We will then move on to A2, receive a report from North Texas Emergency Communications Center, INTEC.
Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor, City Council.
Oh, microphone, please, and then name and address.
Terry Goswick, the North Texas Emergency Communications Center, 1649 West Frankford, Suite 150, Carrollton, Texas. Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor, City Council, City Manager. Terry Galswick with the North Texas Emergency Communications Center. Just want to provide a brief update on the operations that NTEC has done since the last time that I came in front.
Oh, I was just tweaking the sound, so.
No worries. So I just want to provide you with some quick stats over the call volume that NTEC processed over in calendar year 2020. So in 2020, NTEC processed approximately 367,000 calls, of which those were 124,000 were 911 calls. In the City of Farmers Branch, 12,256 of those calls were 911 that NTEC processed. The national standard that communication centers are judged by is 90% of all of our calls must be answered within 10%, and 95% of all of the calls should be answered within 20 seconds. As you can see, NTEC exceeds the national standards. In 2020, we answered 97% of all of our calls within 10 seconds, and 99.69% of all of those calls were answered within the 20 seconds. In 2020, Farmers Branch Fire Department responded to 4,296 calls or events. Our average processing time for those were 47.8 seconds. It's good to note that not all of those calls Farmers Branch responded to. Because NTEC is a regional center, we have partner cities that assist with Farmers Branch response. For the police department, the priority P, which is the most important calls, to priority 2, which are the top 3 most important calls, there were 1,788 calls that Farmers Branch did respond to. And the average processing time was 1 minute and 18 seconds. The processing time just means from the simple time that we say 911, what's the address of the emergency, until we actually have an officer or a fireman en route. So that it takes average of 47 seconds and then 1 minute and 18 seconds for police. Just want to go over some of the financials. The cost allocations for the City of Farmers Branch for the first 4 years of fiscal operations at NTEC, they represented 24% of the cost. In FY21, the year we're currently in now, the City of Farmers Branch has had a reduction down to 14.7472%, which is a reduction of 9.26%. That equals roughly $722,000 that the City of Farmers Branch has saved in their dispatch operations. I briefly want to go over some enhanced service level enhancements that NTEC has done since I last spoke with you. We're going to go over the 911 system that we recently installed, the location identification systems that we currently are using, and the improved GIS data and the updated public safety radio system. First thing is the new 911 system that NTEC installed. We went live with it October 30th of 2019. I'm happy to say that we converted that system with 0 calls dropped and no calls lost during that conversion time, which was a huge success for us. We also were the first 911 center in the state of Texas to meet all national guidelines for emergency communications network. It is a all-digital system that is a 6-way geodiverse national network. If you saw in the news, Nashville got hit by a bomb. Several of their centers got knocked out. They weren't able to call 911. NTEC, it would have taken 6 in geodiverse areas before NTEC would have been affected. So we have lots of redundancy. And important to note that the project was completed on time and well within budget. So we were very proud of that. The next thing that you'll see on the slide is Rapid SOS. Rapid SOS is an implementation that we installed back October to go live in November of 19. This, as you see on the picture, this is that green circle, that is City Hall. When we were going live with this, I asked Mark Samuels, your IT director, to call 911 from his cell phone. If you look on the screen, you'll see the blue, looks like a radio antenna. That is where the 911 system would typically tell the communication center where they're calling from. And if you see, that is somewhere in Dallas. It's not even in NTEC's response zone. But if you look at where that is, if you zoomed in, which we did, for the picture I didn't zoom in, you can tell that he was sitting in the southwest corner of City Hall in his office. So the location identification abilities that NTEC has now This far exceeds what we had previously. The GIS information, Geographical Information Systems, Intech is currently 99.52% accurate, which far exceeds the national standards of 98% for an NG 911 database. When Intech started the process, we were at 64%. That was in large assistance from the cities, all 4 cities, and help for the GIS data, their IT departments, and our department as well. And last but not least, the public safety radio system. Intech took ownership from the Quad Cities back in 2019. The idea was to have one central body that would look out for the best interest of the radio system itself. Since Intech's taken possession of it, we've reduced the operating costs. We've renegotiated the contracts to save annually, bringing some of the services in-house. And we've also upgraded, this year we're going through an upgrade system and the operating system for the radio system. That was a $990,000 upgrade that the board of directors for Intech approved with zero cost being transferred to these cities. We were able to get a grant and renegotiating the contracts, which gave us credits with Harris. And with that, I would ask if there are any questions, sir.
No, first and foremost, I just want to thank you for your leadership in running Intech. I know what it means to not only the city of Farmers Branch, but the 3 other cities of Addison, Carrollton, and Coppell that share in these resources, because I know it makes all of our cities that much safer. And the fact that we're able to partner and help our neighboring cities in ways that other communities aren't, I just think it's a true benefit to all of us. So just want to thank you for that. But I'm going to go to Councilmember Baumgartner. Do you have any questions?
Yeah, if we could go back to the first slide. I think it's the first slide. Further back. This one, yeah, this is the one I was looking at.
Yes, sir.
So as I look at this, in the 911 calls, we represent 10%, it's slightly under 10, but really it's 10% of the calls. In the non-emergency calls, we show 0 in Farmers Branch.
The way the system is set up, your non-emergency number transfers automatically to Intech's number, so they get counted as an Intech number.
Okay, so we don't know how many calls are from Farmers Branch. Okay.
Correct.
Okay. I was just curious how we're using 10% of the system assumptively.
Yes, sir.
And the new cost, we were at 24%, and we moved to 14.7% or whatever.
Yes, sir.
Is that based on usage? And should we expect, if these numbers stay the same and we continue to be in that 10% range, should we expect future discounts?
So every January, the Intech Board of Directors, they get presented, and they'll be presented this coming month with the new cost allocation model. And
Okay.
once the Board of Directors gets the numbers, they will reallocate the
Okay.
cost. Yes,
Great.
sir.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Is that the process that's used based
Yes,
on the
sir.
number of calls?
The process that is used is that it is off a rolling 3 years. So we will use calendar year 18, 19, and 20. And then we will add those 3 years together, and then so it's not off of just 1 year.
Yeah.
It's off a collective of 3 years, sir.
Great. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Councilmember Lynn.
Thank you. I've got a number of questions, and I don't know if there's a good place to start, but I recently had reason to call and request some information regarding a specific issue that had happened, and that was where a Farmers Branch business had called Intech, and when they called 911, the report that was given to me was the phone rang about 25 times, was not answered. The caller then called back on the non-emergency number, which rang about 20 times, and finally got somebody. And an individual then followed up based on the original 911 call. So, there was a delay in service, and so in going back and looking at what happened on that particular day, and this was on November 27th, I had requested information from 10 a.m. to noon. Farmers Branch call count was 3. All other Intech calls were 83. So there were a total of 86 calls that came in during that time. So I'd say, or I guess I would ask, would you say that was an unusually busy period?
Yes, sir. That period of time that you requested, we normally do 62 events. We were doing over double that at that time.
Okay. And I'm asking you some questions. You've already given me some of the answers, but I want folks at home
Yes,
or
sir.
whoever's watching to know. So if the average NTEC call time for Farmers Branch is 5 minutes and 53 seconds, am I taking that's the amount of time that a caller is on the phone with an operator?
We don't keep track of what the average time a caller is on the phone with us.
Okay, then maybe I didn't understand what you wrote here, because it said, I asked, what is the average NTEC call time? Farmers Branch, 5 minutes, 53 seconds. All other NTEC calls, 2 minutes, 11 seconds. Total call average, 2 minutes, 37 seconds. My question was going to be, why are calls from Farmers Branch averaging so much higher than what the NTEC average is? And does that relate to maybe the number of police calls versus fire calls?
I don't know the stats that you're looking at. I do know that NTEC, our processing times in 2020, your priority Ps through priority 7 was 2 minutes and 11 seconds. And that is those are your police calls. That includes your most urgent down to your delayed calls from someone else. The processing time is what we track, and processing time is the time that we say hello until we send someone on their way. Their person still may be on the phone. I know the police department in Farmers Branch responds very quickly. So typically, and so does the fire department, typically they're on scene before we hang up the phone with them.
And I know that to be the case in many instances also, and we really appreciate that. Okay, so I'm curious, I had a couple other questions that I wanted to get to, and regarding NTEC. Now, the call figures that you presented here, do those include hang-ups, or is that a significant number that we should be aware of?
I can get you the numbers for how many 911 hang-ups we have. I will tell you a 911 hang-up significantly puts a workload onto the staff, because it takes one call taker out of the loop, because that call taker is going to have to call back the original caller. So if they hang up and then call back, they may tie up another call taker, while that same call taker is now going to have to call them back. So we've got 2 call takers responding to one call at the same time. So we always tell people, if you dial 911, even if it's on accident, stay on the line, let us talk to you, we'll verify there's not an emergency, or if there is an emergency, we will handle it at that time. But we always tell people, if you dial 911, regardless, stay on the phone.
Okay, that's good to know. I don't know that people necessarily know that, but
Yes, sir.
That's really good information. So I wanted to ask you, in terms of reading over some of the other information that you had provided, are you all fully staffed at this point?
Right now, we have 5 vacancies.
And 5 vacancies, and that's for call takers?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Just curious, what do you estimate that it costs to train a call taker?
I couldn't get you it, because everyone's different. We have call takers that come with a decade or 2 decades of training that don't require as much. And then we have some people who've never picked up a phone call in an emergency situation, so they take a lot longer. I can tell you it takes us over 8 weeks it takes us 8 weeks in the classroom minimum to train, plus then they go through call taking training, NCIC training, each city's radio dispatch. So they go through all that training on top of, and that's if there's no lags, there's no issues. And that doesn't include the 4 to 5 months that our administrative services department puts into hiring them, doing the background and things of that nature.
Okay. Is turnover a high factor that, or I guess what is turnover, and is that a factor that is above or below industry average, let's say?
I can tell you, I don't know the exact number right now, but I do know that Intech's turnover is lower than industry standards. 911 as an industry has a high turnover rate because it's an extremely high pressure, high stress job that most do not understand. Everyone thinks that a police officer and a firefighter, they know that's stressful. They know that there's a lot of sacrifice that goes into that, but they don't realize the hours that a 911 dispatcher puts into taking care of the person. They're the first responder that is involved in the sequence of emergencies. So they do a lot of stress to themselves. They do a lot of hours that they put into the center. They do a lot of training that goes into that. And sometimes the stress is overwhelming. Sometimes the hours are overwhelming.
Okay.
So it is a high turnover industry.
Okay. So the way that you all are doing business today, has that changed over the last year in terms of your organizational structure?
Intech we are now 4 years old, and April will be 5 years old, so we're constantly evolving right now. We are continuously evolving. The national standards are continuously evolving, and the vision of Intech is to be the model of regional emergency communications. So that requires you to change with the time. That requires you to consistently look inwards and say, are we doing it the best? And if the answer is no, then we change.
Okay. I want to go back to the operators. Do you require experience, or do you hire people with no experience?
We do not require experience.
Okay. Are operators expected to do they have to have a certain certification?
They do.
And then is any type of continuing education required of those individuals?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So in terms of being fully staffed, how many total employees would be normally on your payroll?
We have 72 FTEs.
Okay. But 9 operators on the floor at any one time?
Minimum.
Minimum 9, okay.
When I left Intech, we had 14 on duty.
Okay. Has the pandemic caused you to have to change any of your hiring practices?
There have been adjustments made, yes, sir.
Okay, and has that been a negative effect on
We have-
filling these vacancies?
No, sir. Intech has been very fortunate that we don't have a hard time filling our vacancies.
Okay,
We have 5 vacancies today, but as of Monday of next week, we'll have 2.
okay. And I'm assuming, like any other organization, everybody has a really clear expectation of what's expected of them when they're working. But do you provide any type of support since the job is so stressful? Is there support available to the employees to make sure that they stay fresh, stay on their game? Can you describe?
Absolutely. I'm actually very proud of the job that our administrative services does. We have a very robust health and wellness program that not only that focuses on their physicalities through the Go 365 program, but also our administrative services manager and her staff. They work hard at doing outreach programs with the community, with our staff, getting them involved, giving them different events at the organization for them to sort of divert their attention from the stress they've had that day. We also have, and I forgot the name of it, basically a crisis team that they're putting together. There's a diversity team that we have at Intech that ensures diversity, equity. We also have our EAP program that we push constantly. With that, we have lunch and learns at the organization where we invite psychologists and psychiatrists to come out to the organization, and we will pay for the employees to come and have lunch and sit and do a 1-hour block with a psychologist or psychiatrist and listen about not just the stresses of being a 911 dispatcher, but of being a single parent, of being someone who has to work shift work, someone who's working all these hours on top of taking a call, on top of being just the daily life of dealing with COVID now. So we do have a complete robust program, and I would venture to say we'll probably lead this area in how much mental health and physical health outreach that we do for a communication center.
And are those programs provided by outside contractors, if you will?
Yes, sir, through our
Okay.
health and wellness program.
Okay. And you have your own HR department, correct?
We do.
So, so your hires don't have to be approved by anybody in any of the cities?
Say again?
Your hires don't have to be approved?
No, the board
You're
of
hiring your own people, you're responsible for your own staff?
That is correct. The board of directors hires me, and then everyone else is hired under my authority.
Okay. And does your HR person who does your hiring and screening, do they have a HR background?
The administrative services coordinator has a PHR, which is a professional human resources certification. Our administrative services manager is going through the senior, I believe it's senior human resource manager program.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay. I think that's all that I'm going to ask for now. I would like to just tell you, I'd like to come up and visit with you about, I probably have about 20 more questions, but in the interest of time, I don't want to monopolize this discussion any further.
Yes, sir.
But I appreciate you taking time to answer my questions.
Yes, sir. And same with you, with anyone else, you're always welcome to Intech. We're very happy to give tours, and we're very happy to let everyone in the community see what an amazing communication center that the region has. Intech provides a high level of service that most cities within the DFW area does not get.
Thanks. Councilmember Driscoll.
Yes, I don't have any questions. I'd just like to thank you for the presentation. I think the numbers and statistics you've provided, are pretty impressive on the response time. And I also, as you were just discussing with Councilmember Lynn, very, very critical jobs, and just keep doing a good job. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Councilmember Ratana.
Yes, thank you so much for the presentation. And actually, some of the questions were answered by, were also similar to Councilmember Lynn's questions. One in particular was around mental health. I'm a huge advocate for that, so I applaud you all in your proactive approach to ensure the mental health of your employees, especially in such a rigorous and in the job that they do, being in a very stressful environment. So thank you for those insights. I did have a couple of questions, and I know some folks that are maybe listening in are not too familiar with NTEC and why we have this partnership and whatnot. And so I know you explained a little bit about it earlier in your presentation, but I also wanted to see if you can tell us a little bit about the board structure and who's involved, just to give our viewers some insight as to kind of some of the administrative pieces of NTEC and how it's managed. I know that you're head of you're at the helm of the organization, but can you talk to us a little bit about the board structure and who's on that board?
Yes, ma'am. So Intech is set up as a local government corporation with the board of directors consisting of the city managers of each one of the 4 cities. So Mr. Cox serves on the board of directors, and every year it rotates officers of the board. The board appoints the executive director, and under the executive director, we have a deputy director who's responsible for operations, our support services division, which encompasses QA, quality assurance, and also training. Then we have the administrative services manager, who is responsible for all administrative functions of the organization, from human resources to risk management to contract management to fiscal services to payroll. Anything administrative is responsible for the administrative services department. And then we have an IT department, which is responsible for the Intech network. They're responsible for the public safety radio system, the 911 system, and the redundant systems that we have that go between the 4 cities for public safety.
Perfect. Thank you so much for those insights.
Yes, ma'am.
And my next question actually has to do with a piece that you talked about earlier regarding to diversity and inclusion. As you know, Farmers Branch is about 50% Hispanic. Although we don't know how many of those are monolingual, it's very important for us to ensure that we have folks that are able to provide services in their language. And so being as so, I was wondering, out of the 9 minimal operations individuals that you have at one time, is there a policy in place to ensure that a certain percentage are Spanish speaking?
No, ma'am, we don't have a policy that requires Spanish speaking at Intech. We do incentivize those that aren't able to speak Spanish or any other language. Intech does provide a service through Voyance and Language Line, which if someone was to call and speak a language from Farsi all the way to Spanish, Intech can service that call using that third-party provider.
Gotcha. And about how long does it take to be able to tap in to that third-party provider? Just in looking at some of the other cities and what they do, and obviously we're a little different because we're using a third-party provider. One of the things that have been done in the past is to ensure that you do have Spanish speakers on the line, because in certain stressful and emergent situations, it's best to be able to get someone on the line within a matter of seconds than within a matter of minutes. Because it can be a life or death situation. So I'm wondering, is it something that you would consider, or how long does it take to get someone from that third-party vendor on the line to be able to translate? And more specifically around Spanish, because that seems to be one of the languages that gets spoken, if you look at the numbers, gets spoken most frequently here in our region.
Yes, ma'am. I can get you a number. I don't know that stat with me right now, so I can get that provided to you. But I will tell you that the best practices are to have that third-party vendor to take care of it. And the reason behind that is if you have even if you had 4 Spanish-speaking 911 call takers, and they're on a non-English speaking call, and the 5th one comes in, you still need to have a service that provides that. So we never want to rely on just one backup. So that's why we even have 2 third-party providers. But I will get you.
That's definitely, that's definitely understandable. And I would like to see kind of what those numbers look like as it relates to how long it takes to get someone on the line. But I would encourage you to ensure that that's something that you all do keep in mind. Knowing that Farmers Branch is 50% Hispanic, I want to make sure that we have some diversity, especially when it comes to folks that that speak the language and are familiar with it. I do have other questions, but I may do the same as Councilmember Lynn and just talk with you offline to answer some of the other questions that I may have. But those are some of the more pressing questions that I wanted to make sure to bring up for the record. So with that, I appreciate your time, and that is all I have, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Cox, you wanted to say a few words?
Yes, Mr. Goswick, thank you for your presentation. Could you briefly touch on, as a smaller organization, you rely on some of the expertise of the area cities. Could you please touch on, in addition to the board of directors, could you touch on the other groups that you have that come from the cities that help you in making a decision or addressing concerns that you might have?
Yes, sir. So we fully take advantage of the resources that we have within the cities, all 4 cities. So we have a plethora of different groups that we use. The first one that is a formal group is the OAC, the Operations Advisory Committee. That is the 4 police chiefs and the 4 fire chiefs from each one of the cities. That group is responsible for really lending direction to the organization and service level expectations. NTEC is driven as a support entity where we understand that our role is to support the police and the fire departments, provide a service to the cities who they support. The next one we have is our TAC team, the Technical Advisory Committee. That committee is made up of all your CIOs. Mark Samuels is on that group. Anytime we have any IT-related issues that are coming up, any big expenditures we are going to make, any upgrades we're going to do, we use their recommendations and we use their advice. The Finance Directors Committee, all of our, when we're going through and doing our budgetary issues, when we're doing our audit, Sherelle is part of that committee, that she is one of our go-to people that when we have questions that we can go to. And they routinely come out there, all of these committees come out there on pre-COVID every quarter. Now, post-COVID, we do a lot of the Skype calls and we do it infrequently in person. The assistant city manager group that we have, they do a lot of policy because, as you are well aware, the city managers are very busy with running their own city. So we really tap into the resources of the assistant city managers to help us with the directions and help us with the strategic planning of the organization and the directions. We use our human resources. Brian has been real instrumental with that, doing our pay and classification. So when we're creating policies, when we're creating anything that is new, we go through our committees so that to ensure that we are doing the best practices, because I'm a public safety executive. I was not a human resources, I was not a finance, I was not a IT, but we have 4 of each of those to our avail, and we use each one of them all the time. And then we also use our, what we call our FD and PD Ops group. Those are your assistant chiefs or your frontline commanders in the field for the police and fire departments to give day-to-day feedback and to give day-to-day operational issues that the field knows that it would help NTEC to implement. So for every department head you have here, we most likely tap into them as a resource.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you very much. I
you, sir.
appreciate the presentation and your leadership, and look forward to all our cities continuing to work together in this effort.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Next is A3, discuss adding a non-binding item to the May 1st, 2021 ballot related to residential garbage bins. And Councilmember Baumgartner, I know this is an issue you wanted to talk about, so I'll let you kick it off.
Yes, this is something that I recommended that we should talk about. And that is we've had a number of several controversial issues in the cities in the past. You know, recently we had one on the library, where there was controversy over it. And about, I don't know, 3 or 4 weeks ago, there was a long string of people, 60 or so, on Nextdoor, talking about why don't we have trash bins. And it seems that there is, I know there's people who have not wanted trash bins have been vocal. This is the first time people who wanted trash bins have been vocal. And, my belief is that, as Councilman Lynn recommended for the library, is that we should put it out to the citizens for a vote. And not that we should vote for them to put it in non-binding, but to give, I'll be off the council then, I won't have a vote after the May election, but to give the future council, next council, an opportunity to see where the citizens really stand. And is it a vocal majority or, on one side or the other, or is it a minority that is fighting one or wanting one? I think it would give a great opportunity for the next council to really find out without listening to our neighbor, just the 3 or 4 or 10 or 20 people that we know, but to get out and figure out what's best for the city. What do the citizens really want?
Okay. Councilmember Lynn, do you have any comments?
I do. Let me just first say I'm not opposed to the use of trash bins, only because I use one myself. However, I do oppose putting this on the ballot for a couple of reasons at this time. The May ballot is only going to have 2 council districts or 2 seats up. It's not going to be representative of the city. So the expense of doing that and adding that to the ballot, or if you were wanting to incorporate adding something for the whole city to come out, which I don't know that folks are going to come out just to vote on a non-binding resolution. I don't think that would be financially wise to do. The better suggestion in my mind, and one that I think that we might get a more accurate response from, would be to send a direct mail piece to each household and ask them, pose the question with a postage paid response card that they could drop in the mail and return to City Hall. I like this idea because you're giving each house one say in determining how we move forward on this particular issue. don't forget, we've had this in front of council a couple times before. We've had a lot of people come and speak on both sides. I too follow Nextdoor. I have not seen 60 people on Nextdoor. I think there's a group of about 15 in actuality, some of which are Farmers Branch, some are not. And so I have to take that with a grain of salt. I'm not trying to diminish or lessen their concern, because I certainly understand that we do have some issues in some parts of the city that are greater than others with respect to critters getting into trash rather. But I like the idea of sending a mailer and asking for a response for household better than an online survey. Online survey, obviously very cost effective, but it allows for multiple responses from one household, which tend to skew the survey results. And I don't know that we've ever been able to get around that, even in some of the customer satisfaction surveys that we've taken. So if you were insistent on putting something on the ballot as a non-binding referendum, the more appropriate time, I think, would be to wait till the next mayoral election when the whole city votes. And that way, the additional cost of conducting such a poll, if you will, or adding this item to a ballot could be absorbed in the cost of a broader election.
Thank you. Councilmember Driscoll.
I don't have strong feeling one way or the other on this. I think it's something that we do need to hear from the citizens on both sides and their arguments. And I know several of them myself, but I'm thinking also what's more cost efficient and we get the broadest input. And I just have the idea maybe we hire an outside firm to do a survey, which would include online and as well as perhaps direct mail. But I think that might be more cost effective, and the really good survey companies, you know, they have multiple avenues or channels to reach people and hopefully get their input.
Councilmember Rotana.
Thank you, Mayor. I've actually received a number of inquiries, some of which, actually most of which are not even from my district, mostly centered around the center of our city, related to the need or interest in having trash bins. I know it's been something that's been brought up in the past. It was actually brought up before I was even on council, but I think it's been a number of years, and I would be interested in getting more feedback and finding a better way to get feedback from our residents. I don't think, because of, you know, as Councilmember Lynn mentioned, the fact that we only have two districts on the ballot for this May, and us wanting to ensure that we get the most when it comes to the feedback that we're wanting to get. I don't think having it on the ballot may be the best option, but you know, Councilmember Baumgartner, I do feel like we need to figure out a way to address this and get some feedback. And so I actually have been thinking about it and think it may be best to potentially hire an expert to be able to get us the most representation when it comes to getting feedback from our residents. You know, in the past, mailers have not really been as responsive. Email or internet inquiries have not been either, just because of access issues. So I do think we need to find a solution, and I think that potentially hiring an expert to do so that has experience in this area would be the best course of action. So, Mayor, those are my thoughts related to this particular item.
Awesome. Thank you, Councilmember Rotana. Charles, maybe Amy, you know, we will be putting on an election in May anyways. What is the added cost to add another item to?
According to our city secretary, it's about $2,000 to $3,000, since we're already holding the election anyway. But just to add it on, that would have been English and Spanish, and depends on how many options you have on the ballot.
Okay. So $2,000 to $3,000, and is someone who has recently gone through several rounds of mailer citywide, knows that it's probably about 23 cents to send something out. You're at $2,300 to send out a mailer to the entire city, which for me puts this cost at about the same, almost a wash. And I want to check my memory. It's a little spotty. Did we do a mailer or a survey 2 years ago regarding this trash and bins and whether people wanted a card or not? And
Well, we went down this path before, which that was so much fun the first time. To what I remember, we did all options. We did mailers, we did online survey. Tom did everything I think he could to get the information out there. So if I remember, we used all medium we had available to us. What I was trying to remember with Ben is, was it before we made the decision to just have recycling in carts? Or was it before the whole discussion or after? I can't remember the exact time without going back to emails and trying to dig up reports. But what I recall, we used online, direct mail, online survey, everything we had to our.
And this was kind of after we had the big town hall here.
So in terms of
about
before
that,
town hall, before or after that, but it's in that same time period.
in that same time frame.
Yes, sir.
And do we know how many people responded to that one?
We have data, I'd have to go back and find it.
You have to go back and find it. Okay.
If you need it, I'll go back and get it and send it out to everybody.
I'm going
But
to ask Ben a different question since he handles our citywide surveys every 2 years on the satisfaction. What's the most amount that's ever been received?
It hovers around 14%, but one of the changes that council directed with this year was to move away from the biennial survey and move more to targeted surveys. So one of our goals for this fiscal year is to get away from the 45-minute survey and start moving towards targeted surveys. So we could put this as one of the questions we put on a targeted survey that's much more truncated, that really focuses on this question. And what would happen is a firm would help validate the question statistically and show us how to deliver it in the best way to get more of a response from our public. But traditionally, over 20% just does not happen.
And, I mean, the most amount of surveys that have been turned in previously from the resident satisfaction, what ballpark number? Not just a percent, like is that 2,000, is it 4,000?
Oh, 2000 would be the absolute highest. And that was at least 6 years ago from my checking on the results, but it hovers right around 1,400 to 1,200.
Okay. And, thank you. Those are the questions I had for you. I'm thinking back to 2 years ago when the library was on the ballot, which was a non-mayoral year, only 2 districts up, nothing else, and everyone was afraid that we weren't going to get a good turnout. But I believe you might know the number, 3,700 people turned out to that election? 38?
I think it was a little over 3,700, but less than 4,000.
Which the mayoral election just before that only got 3,200 at its high peak. So the way that I look at these numbers, I feel that if it's an issue important to the city, whether it's 2 people or the entire city, people are going to come out and voice their opinion. And, anything over 3,000 is historically been a great representation for our city in terms of what people want in their homes and, who they want sitting up here or what policies or bonds we want to approve or disapprove. And, looking at those numbers, looking at what a survey gets us, it seems to me that the added cost to add this to an election is the same as sending out mailers and surveys. And the added cost or the amount of information we're going to get back, if like the library pushes over 3,000 is, almost 150% more feedback than we would get from even our best survey ever. And so, as Councilmember Baumgartner is recommending, I would be in favor of putting this on the ballot and ending it once for all, because a loud echo from that town hall that we heard from people was, put it on the ballot. And that's the same thing. So I'm going to leave my points there. I just wanted to bring some of those items up and put some math to it because I know you love math. And so
Just a couple of follow-up
Yeah.
points. Back in, really it was 2016, maybe 2015, when we went with the recycling bins and decided not to use trash cans. And the conversation on recycling here and with the residents was about 50-50. But yet, I think when we rolled out the recycling program, just under 80% chose to take recycling carts. It was 78% or something?
When we started, it was around 80%. We hover right at 85 now.
We're
It's
at
only ones
85
and
now,
twosies
but
each month
yeah.
of taking off, adding on, so.
Yeah, you know, and this is the point of the conversation, you know, back and forth. And while the cost of us sending a mailer, but Councilman Lynn's recommendation was sending it with postage paid back, that's got to add another $2,000, you know, to get it back. And would drive that cost more. And what we're talking about is non-binding. We're talking about if we get 30% of the people to share their opinion, right? That's a huge sample. Polls, you know, go for, you know, national polls, you know, when you read through and what they're doing, you know, they're talking about 2,000 or 3,000 people nationally to, you know, try to figure out where people are and the polls. And this is a large sample. The purpose is just for, the recommendation is, you know, to give the next council an idea of where the citizens really stand. If it's, you know, if it's 55-45, then maybe it requires a deeper dive, and then maybe it needs to go on November election, right? When there's a bigger turnout. But if it's 75-25, one way or the other, from that it being non-binding, something like that, then you'd be in a place where you'd say, okay, this is the will of the people, and it would be easy for the next council to react.
Okay. Mr. Cox, I'm going to go back. I'll get to you. I'm going to go back through. So, yeah.
Sounds good, thanks.
Mayor, obviously, staff is prepared to go whichever direction council wishes to go on this. I do want to mention that, you know, over the past year, I've heard different flavors of bins or no bins, whether it be optional bins, whether it be mandatory bins for regular garbage, whether it be bins at a cost. And so these are all different flavors of, you know, bins and multiple size bins. And sometimes, you know, just on a ballot, if you have one, you know, do you like bins, yes or no, you may not get the exact information you're looking for to provide what the electorate is trying to get to. And versus a survey, you can have multiple questions to kind of hone in as exactly what folks are interested in. So I just throw that out as the, you know, the difference between the survey method and the ballot method is you can, I think, be a little bit more specific on the survey method, but obviously we'll do whichever council wishes to do.
And what's the last date that we would have to make a decision by? February 12th? Okay. Councilmember Lynn, any follow-ups?
Yes. Again, unless we're going to survey the whole city or put this on a ballot for the whole city to turn out for, I would be against it because with only 2 seats up, I think your participation from the other 3 districts is going to be dismal at best. If there's another way of doing this that will incorporate addressing all households in the city, then I would certainly be on board to support something like that. It's to me, it's the fairest thing to do if you're taking a poll. You ask everybody.
Okay. Councilmember Driscoll.
I would be in favor of doing something, if we're going to, in May or, you know, this year, and not the next mayoral election. And I didn't know what exactly the costs were if we put this on the ballot. They're not that much, and it's kind of a wash. Sounds like from the numbers and the expense if we did a survey. And as Mr. Cox said, with a survey, you can have a few questions and kind of drill down and find out exactly what people are in favor of, because often kind of in, you know, yes or no polls, I don't think that's really giving a lot of useful information. And some people will just kind of have emotional reaction, yes or no. But as Mr. Cox said, you know, there's different flavors, and would someone, I don't know, say be in favor of that if that added a couple of dollars to their bill every month to have the bins. And, you know, there's different pieces of the question, I guess. So, but I favor doing something this year.
Okay. Thank you. Councilmember Rotana.
Thank you, Mayor. Actually, what Mr. Cox brought up is something that I wanted to bring up too. Really, it's just, I think some folks just really want the option. There has been a lot of issues with animals getting into the trash and whatnot, and those are the issues that I've heard. And so, even I would not be opposed to adding this to the May ballot. However, as much as I would love to see 100% voter registration from our community, some are either may not be eligible, some may just not vote. It's just something that they believe in, although I wish that would change. And so I wouldn't want to disenfranchise folks from not being able to share their voice. And so I think if we do, I would still like to have the option and maybe using a more targeted approach, like our assistant city manager advised, to ensure that we do have different avenues to be able to get the information. Again, to Charles's point, I think it's a matter of options, and I think that providing those and maybe even in a pilot opportunity would be best, just to ensure that if there's the opportunity for those that want it to be able to acquire it. That I would not be opposed to adding this to the May ballot, just to get a sense of where everybody stands. But I would encourage us to also provide a different avenue, a more targeted approach to be able to show options.
Okay. Thank you very much for that feedback.
Mayor, question. I want to get clarification. Was, according to the city secretary, the cost to add one question to the ballot was approximately what? And it,
2,000 to 3,000 was her answer on
2,000 to 3,000, and is that based on just the 2 districts? Would that cost go up if we were having a whole city election?
Let me jump in. It's going to cost,
Well,
it's going to cost about okay.
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 Councilman Lynn, I do not have the exact cost. However, we're talking paper. We have 2 places to vote. It would be, the senior center and the library. So it would be the cost of the ballots, which I estimate or guesstimate at 2,000 to 3,000. Right. Yeah.
Okay, and that's just one question.
Right.
Okay, if we added multiple questions to dig down, because if you said, do you favor the use of trash bins, yes or no? Would you favor an opt-in program, for example, yes or no? That's a second question. Another 2,000 or 3,000? Another cost?
I think your cost is in your facilities and your people and your paper.
Okay.
I could check with the county and get you an exact number. We still have time to get those, but I would suggest that it would be around that cost.
Okay.
To add.
Maybe we can get some better information by the next meeting in order to make a determination, or do we have to take action tonight?
We don't have to take action tonight, and my recommendation was going to bring it back because we have 2 potential more meetings to discuss this
Okay.
before we have to ultimately make a decision.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. So with that, I was going to say, we've heard some great, ideas and input just from everyone in terms of maybe some different things that we need to consider. And we will bring this back again to take a look at different options and what we think will be the best course. Appreciate everyone.
Mayor, can
Yes.
I add that in the meantime, council needs to think about what are the propositions they want to put to the voters. So, because eventually we're going to have to pass a resolution or ordinance calling an election on those propositions. So we need to think about that sooner than later so we get that nailed down.
I assumed we'd talk about it at least at the next meeting and see where we go from there. So, okay. Thank you. Next, A4, discuss forming a code enforcement task force to review current regulations. And so as we've kind of done in the past, one of the things that I definitely want to take a look at, something that, should come up from time to time, much like we review the charter, to see what kind of policy upgrades we need to make and decisions that are going to impact our city and what we want to do. I think that over time, we've added so many different things to the code enforcement and our rules, regulations, and things that in today's time probably just need to be reviewed. But I think we need to do it in such a way that each district is represented, that we have multiple residents on this task force, and that we can come through and look at not only recommendations from staff, but take recommendations from people within each district so that we can have a true input on what's important to people, where we want code enforcement to go, and through a series of meetings, I'm thinking 4 at most, with the 4th meeting being the group coming back to council to make a formal presentation to all of us on that kind of direction. We can then evaluate what we're hearing from our residents. Council members would have liaisons with their own individuals in their districts to talk through stuff, but also the impetus would be on people to get out into the community and discuss these with neighbors as well, because a lot's changing, the city's growing, a lot of new houses, a lot of different types of housing situations. So what do we want to see, not only from where we live, but how we maintain certain things within our businesses, retail, commercial properties. Let's just take a look at the whole thing, kind of like we do with the charter review. And my recommendation is 2 people from each council member's district. Would love for you to have those back to me by the end of this month, so that we can kick this off in February and take a more formal review, at which point we'll kind of appoint someone to head up that group and lead those meetings maybe once a month until that 4th meeting, when we come back and hear a presentation on things that we might want to look to add, cut, modify, and where we want to put focus. And that's kind of what I want to see from this. And I think it allows all of us to have a much better input into the direction we want to go in the community of Farmers Branch. And so I'll go around and just see if anyone has any issue with this. I don't know how much I'm going to really, kind of just want some extra input, but that's kind of my recommendation, because I still want to keep it somewhat small, but focused, and allow people to get out and gather information and bring that back to us. But Councilmember Bob Gardner.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea. I know from the staff's point of view, code enforcement is perhaps the hardest job in the city for the employees. It's the area of highest turnover historically. And some of that is because we keep moving the goalposts. And, being able to refine and define exactly what, and have it be supported by the council, what we're going to enforce and what we're not going to enforce would be a great thing.
Okay. Councilmember Lynn.
I think this is long overdue, and I see it as a good thing for the city. Times change, desires of the public change, and we're here to serve them. The staff is here to serve the public. And so what was important many years ago when a particular code was written may or may not be relevant today. And I think it's really a good thing that we do this and try to get a handle. I'm curious, though, because just in my work with Hugh previously in trying to learn a lot about code enforcement, it's a massive undertaking. You think you're allowing 4 months?
Yeah.
You think that's enough time, or do you want to see where they are in 4 months? Because I have a feeling it's probably going to take them longer.
Well, I mean, from my understanding, I know we've already started kind of taking the look internally. I know it started with you, and now you're kind of leading the charge, and there's already been some kind of recommendations. And like I said, it's kind of like the charter review, to where policy and recommendations from a legal standpoint are kind of put on the table, and then the group comes in and adds item A or B, or we don't like C, let's kind of remove that and come back to us to make that presentation where we say, yes, this is kind of the direction we want to go. We agree with 90% of that, those 10 kind of we don't, but at least we're getting that citizen input, and it's people that you all get to select, that you get to, who are passionate about this, but also, have that conversation as it's going so that we're all informed, and it's just a more fluid process. And that's kind of the amount of time the charter usually takes. And I feel like with a head start from staff making a lot of the recommendations of what's outdated, what's not, on their opinion in terms of what they've seen, I think it's going to help people make a little bit better decision. And, if it needs to extend, we can, but the goal would be hopefully, by May or June, let's have that conversation back here at council so that we can take some action and move forward.
Okay, I just like to make sure that they have ample time to address all the areas that they need to address. So if it takes longer than 4, I'm fine with that. Just
Yeah. I mean, task force right now, I think 6 months, and then council has to kind of approve whether that continues or not. So, it allows us to move a little bit more quickly, but that's kind of, we have the option to extend and do stuff if we have a council feel that they have more to do or explore. But, kind of the goal, I think, is, let's see where we're at in 4 months and go from there. You good? Councilmember Lynn? Okay. Councilmember Driscoll?
Yes, for all of the reasons mentioned already and many others, I think it's a good idea. I think it's timely, and I'm in favor of it.
Okay. Thank you. Councilmember Ratana?
Thank you, Mayor. And you and I have talked about this. I'm all in favor. I think it's a great idea, and love that we're including every single district and all of their thoughts, because every area is very, very different. So I'm all for this and look forward to submitting our names for District 1. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. So with that, yeah, just I think in the first meeting in February, if we can have those names, they'll be recommended, and then we'll formalize it from there and move forward. So just be thinking about who you want to add, and we can go from there. So with that, we will move on to A5, discuss future agenda items. Councilmember Baumgartner, do you have anything?
Nothing at this time.
Cool. Councilmember Lynn?
Sorry. I do. Based on what is happening with respect to COVID vaccine, I would like the city, and whether this is the environmental health staff or whomever, HR, whatnot, to develop some communication that we can start sending out on a more regular basis to our residents, especially the over 65 population. We already know who those people are, but they don't know what's going on. They don't know what to do. I'm getting questions by phone and email daily, and I don't have all the answers. And so as much as I've been in contact with Dallas Medical Center, I would like staff to try to develop a plan for informing these individuals, at least the 1B individuals, as soon as possible.
Yeah. Thank you. I'd agree with that. Councilmember Driscoll?
No, not at this time.
Okay. Councilmember Ratana?
Thank you, Mayor. I don't have anything, but I do want to, Councilmember Lynn, I'm so glad you brought that up. I'm on the task force for Dallas County with Dr. Wong regarding communications, and I think they're working on a more regional approach to communicating all of the information in both English and Spanish. So I definitely think it's needed and could definitely assist in those efforts with staff, is wearing my children's health hat, but also ensuring that we also align our communications with the county, just to make sure there isn't any misinformation with that as well. So thank you for bringing that up.
All right. With that, I'm going to go ahead and read in executive session. Council may convene into a closed executive session pursuant to Section 551.074 of the Texas Government Code to deliberate regarding, consider appointment to quasi-judicial board, planning and zoning commission. Council may convene into a closed executive session pursuant to Section 551.072 of the Texas Government Code to deliberate regarding, discuss the purchase, exchange, lease, or sale of real property located north of Valley View, south of Valwood, east of Josie Lane, and west of Webb Chapel. We will recess. It's 4 now. I guess we're going to recess. We're going to come back and do executive session at 4:45 so that we can address item 2 and then handle the appointment starting at 5 o'clock. But we will recess until that time. It is 4:19. Thank you.